Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's live questions and answers with Magdalena on hormones balance. I've been away for 6 weeks, the whole of December and half of January. I took some time off and went to Portugal. It's a great place to go to because it's the south of Europe and you don't have the crowds typically that are happening in summer. And so everything is significantly cheaper, yet it's warm. And it's just a beautiful country and it's got beautiful people. So I had a wonderful break. I hope you had some good breaks as well during this time. I feel like December is a really good time to kind of shut everything down. Not only is winter the kind of time of retrospection and closure because it's cold and so it gets dark outside, so we are not really supposed to be going out there and partying all the time the way we do in summer. So I hope you have taken advantage of that and had some good time to yourself, to rest your adrenals, to reflect a little bit, to maybe plan. For those of you who got the planners, let me just show you mine. Actually, I've got it right here. I wasn't gonna talk about it, but those are the planners that I talked about when I was in Portugal and I started working on them. It's the Shining Year for business, and there was another one for life, which are pretty awesome. So yeah, so that was my December, just filling in those and just planning out what's gonna be happening in 2017 for me. I hope you had some time to do some planning as well around your health and life and what you want your business or career to look like, family life, love life, health life. So share a little bit about what's been going on, what's good that happened for you in December that you would want to share with us. So for those of you who are new to this, the way I run the live questions and answers is, actually I'm gonna do one thing. I'm gonna make sure that I'm gonna use my iPhone. There we go. I'm just gonna change the microphone. Okay, awesome. The way I'm running the live Q&As is that I'm gonna start off with a theme, and then we're gonna go over to your questions that you were asking live. And so whatever I see, I'm gonna get to it, but you're gonna keep your questions pretty short because if it's too long, it shows up on my phone, which is down below the camera, and it just shows up for literally 3-4 seconds and then it disappears, and I can't go back to it while I'm doing things live. So for those questions that are really good and I'm missing, what I'll do is I will answer them the following week on the next call. And it's always happening on Fridays at 10 o'clock Pacific, 1 o'clock Eastern. And for me, it's Mountain. I'm in Boulder, Colorado. So let's get started. Today's topic that I chose, oftentimes I choose topics because of the number of questions that we are getting through email, you guys are posting on Facebook. And I think one of the big topics that's been coming up recently is, I just got my lab work from the labs. I got all my tests done, and everything is perfect. It's great. It's normal. Everything is normal. And so I'm always really happy to hear this. But then you ask the follow-up question, but how do you feel? And how do you feel? And that's when you get a very different story. My hair is still falling out. I can't lose the last 20 pounds. I can't sleep at night. I got anxiety problems. My menstrual period is all over the place, right? I got terrible cramps. And the list of symptoms just goes on and on and on. And that's what made me realize, and this is the very same person who just said that her labs are normal. And so what I want to talk about today is, why is it that you could be getting your labs and not really, and how to interpret them and what kind of labs to get and stuff like that. So let's just start off with the first one, and that is that not all hormones are the same. There are two significant groups of hormones, one called the peptide hormones, where things like the thyroid, the FSH, which is a follicle stimulating hormone, LH, luteinizing hormone, falls under, TSH as well, thyroid stimulating hormone produced by the pituitary gland. So that's one group of hormones, and the peptide hormones are perfectly fine to measure with blood, also known as serum, right? So very common, like you go and ask your doctor to run these tests and they will do it. And we'll talk about a little bit more about what kind of test to ask for thyroid. And if you have questions, just post them and I'll get to them in just a little bit. But then you have the other set of hormones called the steroid hormones. And here you have some very important hormones that are really that are critical in your life, right? I mean, you couldn't live without any of these hormones. And that will be your cortisol, progesterone, estrogen, DHEA, and testosterone. These 5 steroid hormones, super important. So guess what? Measuring them with serum or blood doesn't really show the real picture. And there's a lot of arguments in the medical community around whether blood is right or wrong for steroid hormones. A lot of doctors will tell you, is the live feed coming? Susan is asking. I thought it was. Can you guys confirm that you can see me and hear me live? That would be really good. So what is happening is that, so when it comes to the steroid hormones, I have seen this over and over again, where women would say, you know, when they show me the lab work, and okay, cool, Forrest, thank you. So everything is going live, so that's awesome. So I think for the person who couldn't see just now, I would suggest close your browser and restart again. That should be, and you can hear me well. Thanks, Chrissy. So, so when it comes to steroid hormones, I have seen this over and over again. And mind you, I don't have any agenda of promoting one method over another. You know, I'm very objective here because, you know, I work with what works because I want that to work for you. And I don't represent any labs. I'm not an owner or an investor in any labs. So I'm just giving you my unbiased opinion. And that is, having worked with probably over 1,000 women on a one-on-one, what was going on is that I would see the blood work coming in with estrogen, progesterone, DHEA, testosterone, and it's showing everything is perfect. Furthermore, most doctors don't even ask us most of the time to when did you take your estrogen, for example. And your estrogen or progesterone levels during, for example, ovulation versus you know, around your period are two very different levels. And so most women don't even remember where they were in the cycle when the blood was taken. But more importantly, what I have seen over and over again is that you get your blood work and it looks perfect, but then the person is hugely symptomatic. So one little side note here I want to make is that one of the ways of knowing who is a great provider, who is a great doctor you're working with, it's not just a doctor who is fixated over reading the labs and is just a paper pusher, you know, is a lab reader who just reads the labs and it's like, well, but you don't have a problem. Your labs say you're perfectly fine. A really good practitioner would look at 3 things. Your family, actually it should be 4 things. Your family history, or we could say together, your history, so your health history, where did you live? What's your stress levels, right? Were you exposed to toxicity? What does your mom have? What does your dad have? We tend to have these predispositions from our parents. But then number 2 is that what are your symptoms that you're currently going through, right? And never shutting those down just because the labs show otherwise. And only 3rd, they use labs to back things up or discover things that they couldn't discover otherwise. And that's really important to understand. So if your doctor is the type who looks at labs alone, dismisses your symptoms, then it's a very clear sign that it's time to change your doctor. And if you guys are interested, I can post the link on how to find good physicians through the integrative medicine, functional medicine forum and things like that. There's listings. You just enter your zip code and you look for a good practitioner. You have to still vet them, but it's a good starting point. So let's go back to those hormones. And so what if you don't do blood? What else? What options are there? For a long time, saliva was the way to go with steroid hormones. And I used to use saliva from a lab called Labrix, you know, and it was good. It was showing a better picture already, because then I could see, for example, cortisol 4 times in a day. Where was it high? Where was it low? What's going on? And that sometimes that visual picture also helps you understand that things are maybe not in a good place and you really need to slow down or stop exercising so much. Or, yeah, Colleen, I'll post that. Or that you know that you need to stop drinking coffee first thing in the morning, to stop just, you know, amping up your body all the time, right? So saliva was a pretty good picture, it was giving us a pretty good picture of what was going on. It was pretty reflective of the symptoms that I was seeing in clients. But there's a new technology that's now come out, which the good news is you can order yourself, and it's through urine. And the beauty of that urine test, called Dutch, I'll tell you about it in a second, is that it shows in a lot of detail. First of all, urine is much more accurate, as a lot of the medical practitioners have agreed on, but also more importantly showing the metabolites. Metabolites are like the broken parts. Like for example, progesterone, you might want to look at a couple of different metabolites of progesterone to see really what's going on, because one can be really super helpful, the other one is kind of doesn't really matter. With estrogen is the same thing. For example, estrone is one of the estrogen hormones. When estrone breaks apart, it breaks it to 2, 4, and 16 hydroxyestrone. So those are metabolites. And one of them, the 16, is very, very antagonistic, and that's one of the leading causes of breast cancer, or I should say, it helps when it's high, when it's elevated, it profiliates, helps the profiliation of breast cancers in a woman's breast. And so it gives you a much, much deeper picture. The bad side of Dutch is that you've got to have a practitioner help you interpret that, because it's pretty complex. I certainly got mine interpreted by somebody who was trained by Dutch, because I haven't been trained on it, so it was kind of hard to know it all by myself. Dutch, you spell it D-U-T-C-H, like something that came from Holland, Dutch. And you can order that online. It's DutchTest.com. I think it's $400. I think it's well worth it just to see what is going on, and using that as either preventative measure, or using that as a picture of what is going on right now with your hormones. Like I said, you need to find a practitioner to work with you on that. So all your steroid hormones are going to be measured by Dutch, which is really great. It has helped me, for example, see a lot of things that I had certain estrogens low, but the estrogens that are the main reason why we develop breast cancers were, for example, in a really good place in my case, but overall estrogens were pretty low. So I need to ramp up my estrogen intake in form of foods. I love doing things like flaxseed, ground flaxseed, a couple of tablespoons a day. I haven't been doing it for a while, so I'm gonna go back on doing that. And when you're low on estrogen, you wanna do that through the cycle. For those of you who are familiar with seed rotation, you do the seeds first part of the cycle, second part of the cycle, you switch to different seeds. So flaxseed is in the first part of the cycle, right? The follicular phase. So so from your first day of your period till ovulation, when you're low on estrogen, you do that across your cycle, and it doesn't really matter, but you do add the progesterone boosting. If you're still menstruating, you do add actually for both of them, for menopausal women as well, you want to add the progesterone boosting sesame seeds and sunflower seeds in the second part of the cycle. Stephanie's asking, natural progesterone cream if you have estrogen dominant symptoms along with good foods. That's a really great question. So I'll answer that question right away. I might be having a little bit of bias here, because I am so deep in nutrition, right? And I'm such a believer in nutrition. Here's the thing: if you still have your ovaries, right? Then the question is, I would ask Stephanie, why are your ovaries not producing sufficient progesterone on its own, right? That's the first question that I would ask. Now, if you are having really severe symptoms of estrogen dominance, unbearable PMSs, you can't sleep at night, you've got anxiety attacks, I think progesterone cream is a really great addition just to stabilize your body. In the meantime, figure out why are you estrogen dominant and why are you having low progesterone in the first place. Two reasons why progesterone is not happening. One is deficiencies, especially vitamin B6. It's one of the big culprits of why we're having low progesterone levels. The second one, which I see a lot of, is that when you have chronically high cortisol levels because of stress, the receptors for progesterone, so every cell in the body has a receptor, right? And those receptors that are for progesterone, they're like there to receive progesterone, right? To come in. When you have chronically elevated cortisol levels, guess what? That receptor gets insensitive, and it doesn't want to allow the progesterone from coming through. So the reason why I have a little bit of resistance, actually quite a bit of resistance around progesterone creams or any external hormones, unless you really need them, like for example, somebody who's lost their ovaries, right, is because I feel like it's a bigger picture we are missing here. Why are you not producing enough progesterone? Why are you deficient of, right? That's the first question. Second one is there stress going on in your life, so much so that your body is not able to receive that progesterone and use it. Sometimes also in times of stress, the ovaries are also not producing sufficient progesterone. That's another thing. So that also, again, it points back to cortisol, elevated cortisol levels and chronic stress. And so on one hand, you know, you do progesterone cream and you start feeling better, and that's great. But on the other hand, you know, you're shutting down that other part of the equation, and that is, what else are those elevated cortisol levels, or what else are those nutritional deficiency doing, you know, in my body? I hope it makes sense. But that's reason why, you know, I'm a big believer of really rebalancing the body overall by using the seed rotation, by relooking at your nutritional deficiencies. You know, vitamin B6 is huge. I mean, doing things like, a little tip here for you, if you're still menstruating, doing beets and carrots just 5 days before your period, whether it's in the form of a smoothie, whether you, and it can be raw, it doesn't really matter, whether you make a smoothie out of them or whether you make a salad. I like to just grate them. That's gonna be one of the recipes in my upcoming cookbook. Toss them with some olive oil and lemon juice and walnuts, and it's a lovely salad. Doing that 5 days before your period is really going to help with PMSs, and it helps to build progesterone. So beets and carrots, simple things like that can really change a lot of things, and of course addressing the stress. So let me move on to the second part of the whole issue with what is wrong with labs and why you're not feeling well. Okay, so maybe the first thing is maybe it got tested by blood only, if it was a steroid hormone, and you're like, doctor tells me it's fine, and I can tell you it's not. The second thing that I see, even if it's done through urine, even if it's done through saliva, very much so through blood, is the reference range. So when you look at your labs, when you receive your labs from the doctor, you see the reference range, right? And I'm just gonna give you an example here of a reference range for progesterone, salivary progesterone test, right? So the range for normal progesterone that you should be feeling good in is between 125, so hear this, 125 to 445. If you think about it, that's like, if you take 125, you multiply it by 3 or so, I'm bad at math, 3.5, you get to the 450. That's a huge spread if you think about it, right? Now, it could be that, let's just say Stephanie, since she's the one who asked the question, let's just say Stephanie received her salivary results and she looks at her progesterone and her results are 150. Is she within the range? Is she normal? Yes, the answer is yes. Laurie's asking balance with hot flashes. I'll talk about it in a second. It's actually, I did another call on that, so and in a second I'll tell you about it. So let's just Stephanie had 150 as a result, right? But she's still feeling deficient, and that's why she's considering going on progesterone cream. Now, I get mine tested, and mine are, let's just say, in 400, right? And so I'm like, well, that's great, because, so what's happening here is, you know, and I'm feeling, actually, the question's coming in, it kind of distracted me. Okay, so let's just say that I'm in, let's just say that I'm at 150 as well. And guess what? My 150 might work well for me, and I'm feeling fine. If I was any higher than that, I might be feeling drowsy and kind of lazy and you know, slow and have a little bit of foggy brain, right? When I've got too much progesterone, which most women, it doesn't happen unless you're supplementing. But for Stephanie, the 150, even though she's within the range, might not be enough. And the reason why it's not enough, because her normal might be that she has to be at 350, which means that she has to be double, more than double than what she is right now. So be careful with reference ranges. They are just for a reference. They are taken from an average of the population that's being tested in the lab, of what's being considered healthy. People who do not have symptoms, that's what's being determined as the range. But that doesn't mean that that range is that healthy use. So that goes back to what I said originally. I hope, are you guys following me? I hope this is making sense. So I hope this explains like what I was talking about earlier about working with a physician who really understands the you know, the power of your symptoms, right? And so for example, if you are having irregular period, if you have mid-cycle spotting, if you have miscarriages on a regular basis, you can't fall asleep, you have anxiety attacks, right? You know, you have infertility problems, right? Well, what happened then is, you know, that's when the doctor says, you know what, I think you might have a low progesterone, even though your reference range, even though the results say you are normal, I see that there could be a problem here. Why don't we do seed rotation? Why don't we do vitamin B6? Why don't we do those carrots and beets? That doesn't work. If you want more immediate results, why don't we do progesterone cream for the next 3 months and see how you feel? So that's about that part of the hormone. The other one that I want to talk about, which is infamously misdiagnosed, is thyroid. And I'm wondering here, we have a very small group. I think it's because today there is the inauguration ceremony today, and so I'm sure a lot of people are watching. And so I'm wondering whether, how many of you here are having a thyroid problem, or you suspect you're having a thyroid problem? And when I say suspect, it could be that you're having symptoms such as hair loss, tremendous fatigue, anxiety attacks, really dry skin, you're losing your eyebrows, you're going through depression, you can't explain why, you're putting on weight even though you're eating the same thing as you did 5 years ago. You know, what else? You're having problems with miscarriages, fertility issues. Lori's suspecting thyroid. Okay. You know, anxiety, like I mentioned. I mean, fatigue, the thyroid fatigue is like, it's just, Charlene is saying half a thyroid, no mats. Wow, that's amazing that your body is able to, that means you got a pretty good balance in your body for you to, Forrest is asking about progesterone cream better than another. Yeah, it's not really my area of advising, so I wouldn't really want to comment on that. I think you have to work with a practitioner on the progesterone cream and get advice from there. So let me talk a little bit about a thyroid, since there's a number of you who expressed that you were suspecting have a thyroid problem. Again, those symptoms that I mentioned are super important. Thyroid, in my opinion, is the most underdiagnosed and misdiagnosed condition in this country. And so instead we are being put on anti-anxiety medication, on antidepressants. When you have a weight problem, you're just putting, you're being just put on medication to help you lose weight, or just be told to go on a healthy diet, whatever that means, right? You know, and sometimes we're just being told to get off the sofa and start exercising more and eating less, right? I mean, that's something that I remember one of my clients was told by her doctor that people in the concentration camps didn't have a weight problem, and hence implying that if she stops eating, then yes, I have most of these symptoms. Susan is saying did saliva test making, yeah. So so using, you know, basically saying like if you are you're fat because you're eating, right? You're having weight problem because you're eating too much, and so which is just absolute and utter nonsense. So I want to talk about the thyroid next. There's a couple of things that you've got to take care of when it comes to thyroid. And the first thing is, I'm going to give you a couple of labs that you can, you're going to insist from your doctor to order. But I want you to make sure that when he actually or she ticks the boxes in a requisition form, make sure it's those numbers that those biomarkers that you've asked for. Because I've seen this many times when doctors are dismissive, and the person goes and says, I want to ask you for this, and then the doctor is only marking like TSH and T4, right? So a couple of things. The first thing that's very standard in thyroid management and amongst most endocrinologists is TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, a hormone that's produced by the pituitary gland to stimulate the thyroid to produce its own hormones, right? Is it accurate? Absolutely not. So, you know, first of all, the range that's used for TSH is 0.5 to 5.5. And by the way, these ranges are broadening every 5 years or so because people are getting sicker and sicker. Like 10 years ago, it was a narrower range. And so, well, guess what? Functional medicine. So people who work, are you guys familiar with functional medicine, like holistic doctors, integrative doctors, right? Who look at root causes of a disease and stuff like that, and not just, not your conventional doctor, if you may, right? I think you're familiar with that. So from a functional medicine perspective, we look at a much narrower range, and that is between 1 and 2. But guess what? Even when you're between 1 and 2, I can tell you that I was always like a 1.6, which is like a perfect right in the middle functional medicine range. And yet I felt like death. I had Hashimoto's and thyroid problems. So that's, thank you, Sherry. She's saying that she's been following me for a while and she loves the live videos. Thank you. So yeah, that's the range issue is the first thing. The second thing is doctors like to, the other thing you want to measure is your free T4, which is, make sure that the word free is there. Not a total free T4 is not the total T4, but the free T4. Free means that what's bioavailable for the body to utilize, okay? That's the first hormone that the thyroid is producing. And what happens then with that hormone is that it gets converted to T3. It gets converted in the gut and the liver. So you're going to have a pretty healthy gut and the liver to convert your thyroid hormone. And that is converted to free T3. Free, F-R-E-E, T3. Free T3 is your working horse. That's what your body receptors in the body have. We do not have receptors for T4, only T3. So it's so important to know how much juice do you have to really power you up? Because that T3 is responsible for metabolism, meaning conversion of fat to energy, is responsible for how beautiful your hair is, the quality of your skin, the quality of your ovaries, how you can hold on to your uterus, how you can hold on to pregnancy. I mean, it's got this cascading effect. And guess what? A lot of doctors do not want to measure free T3, which I think is criminal. So you gotta insist on that and make sure you see the requisition form that it's ticked. Again, the ranges are it's too wide. The range you wanna see from a functional medicine perspective on free T3, which is, remember, that's your juice, right? That's really your magic juice that powers you up. You want the range to be between 3.5 to 4.5. I hope you guys are taking notes. If not, I've got the thyroid diet starter kit. I'm not sure, Lori, what are you asking about? What is the why related to? You're gonna ask the full question. I will post the thyroid diet starter kit, which has got a page that you can print out or take it to your doctor in. Those are the labs that you wanna order. There's 2 more markers I wanna share with you when it comes to thyroid. Those markers, you've got to fight for them like crazy because most doctors don't like to measure them. And that is your TPO antibodies. TPO stands for thyroid peroxidase antibodies. Just use the short form, TPO antibodies, as well as anti-TG antibodies. TG antibodies. TG stands for thyroid globulin. Why don't I have C to measure free T3? Because it's a good question, Lori, because they've been trained in medical school to work on thyroid patients with TSH and total T4 only. And, you know, Western medicine can be dogmatic, and that's how they manage people's health. In the thyroid circles, you know, we believe also that thyroid is not taken seriously, that because of the pandemic of type 2 diabetes, endocrinologists are really busy with that rather than with thyroid conditions. So many of them don't even get properly educated on the topic. Those are is a very old way of managing thyroid health. So going back to these antibodies, the reason why doctors don't like to measure that is because when they come back elevated, which many people with thyroid conditions experience that, there isn't a single pill your doctor can give you for the antibodies to go away. And so for them, it's a bit like, why measure when there is no pill that I can give you? Instead, it opens up a whole Pandora's box of you asking, why is it happening? Why is it elevated? How did I get it? How do I get it lower, right? And Western medicine is absolutely not equipped to deal with that. I had Hashimoto's disease, and by the way, 90% of thyroid conditions in developed countries are the result of Hashimoto's disease, which is an autoimmune disease that attacks the thyroid. And as the immune system that goes haywire, it comes to a point of mutation, and it starts thinking that its own body parts are its enemy. So in case of Hashimoto's, it starts attacking the thyroid, and that's why the markers, the numbers are beginning to look bad. But more importantly, you start feeling really, really sick, right? You're just not yourself anymore. So Really important to ask for those, and when they are elevated, that means right away that that is basically you have Hashimoto's disease. And you know, the good news is that, well, the bad news is that Western medicine, like I said, is not equipped to deal with it. The good news is that there are so many people who've reversed and managed to put Hashimoto's into remission, and it's completely possible. I teach that in the Cooking for Balance program, how to do that through nutrition. The most important body system in managing an autoimmune disease is the health of your digestion. It's your gut, right? So do you guys want to guess what I'm drinking? I'm just going to have a quick drink while a sip of something. Do you guys want to guess what I'm drinking? I've shared this in many calls before in the mornings now, like what's the thing I like to drink first thing in the morning? Well, not first thing, but in the morning. It's 11 here now. Let's see if anybody can take a guess, would know what it is. So I hope this was helpful for you, just to gain a bit of better perspective on testing. You know, if you, lemon water, closed. I did that actually first thing in the morning before I start eating, Sherry. Thanks for guessing. Closed. Not this time around, but first thing in the morning I do. It's a really great practice to start off your day with a warm lemon water first thing in the morning. You know, squeezing, I'll typically do about 4 tablespoons in a glass of warm water before taking a shower. Then I go take a shower, so it takes about 15-20 minutes. Beet juice, somebody's saying, Sally. Yeah, Sally, I don't typically drink beet juice on a regular basis. Don't quite like it. And it's also high in oxalates, and I'm having problems with oxalates right now. So the answer is I'm drinking Tulsi tea, Tulsi, which is a really great adaptogen. It's a wonderful herb from India originally. Tulsi is also known as, oh my goodness, I'm blanking out. It'll come back. So anyway, Tulsi, Tulsi tea, and holy basil. There we go. Holy basil is the other word for it. It's an adaptogen, so which means that if you are having a really sort of like a nervous, day, it calms you down, and if you are overly kind of feeling down, it kind of picks you up. So that's what adaptogens do. They get you to become basically feeling strong and normal. Okay, well, I hope this was helpful. And somebody asked a question about hot flashes. I will post a link to a whole library of these live calls. We've actually put them on a page on my website, so you can get them from there. I did a whole talk about hot flashes, and yes, there's many things you can do. A lot of people talk about like black cohosh, or doing I think black cohosh is like the big one, right, for hot flashes. And the truth is that as long as you take it, it kind of works, and then oftentimes it stops working. But again, I like to where do you get the tea, Sally? I'll answer that in a second. But instead, what I think it's important to realize that a lot of times when it comes to, okay, if estrogen is because of, can I still do the first half of seat rotation? Susan is asking, yes. The answer is yes. And if you're having estrogen dominance issue and pregnenolone steal, then pregnenolone steal happens when you are chronically stressed out. So addressing your adrenals, addressing your stress levels, where this is coming from. Is it coming from your job, your relationships, money situation, kids doing crazy things? Like, where is it coming from, right? And addressing that part. Past trauma, things from the past, maybe you're over-exercising, depending on sugar, depending on coffee. Cut out those, minimize them or refrain them, as I like to call, those issues first, because that's really what pregnenolone steal is caused by. That's a great question. So hot flashes, I was just gonna say that hot flashes can also be caused by, things like, for example, I know that women who get off coffee, gluten, sugar, or minimize sugar, I'm not talking about like 100%, but just, revising things a little bit. Then what happened is then you basically, you free yourself of a lot of the symptoms, including hot flashes. So I did a whole call. I'm gonna post it there down below so you guys will know it. Sally was asking just now about rebalancing. Oops, what was the question just now? Can I go back to the question? No, I can't. Okay. Oh, weight gain, right. Hey, Sally, I did a whole call on weight gain already. If you want, I can post that. I think that's one of the most common questions. I talked about all the various imbalances that are causing weight gain in terms of hormonal imbalances. So take a look at that. Okay, you guys, I hope this was helpful. Take a look at your labs if you are still in doubt about what I'm talking about, and either go back and retest, or if that's important to you. And is it necessary to test? Well, if you have the extra cash lying around, if you're really stuck, you don't know what's going on, if it could be, if you have symptoms that could be like spread across so many different things that it's hard to say which hormone is out of balance, then I think it's a really good idea to do it. But but if you were like a little bit tight on cash and you're really sure this is helpful, then what I would recommend doing is really make those dietary changes I teach, and you're gonna start feeling incredible results really, really quickly. Okay, so have a lovely weekend, everybody. Do something that is so self-loving. Go for a massage, go for a really nice walk, do something nice for someone, or let somebody do something really nice for you this weekend, just as a sign of self-love and as a bit of self-nourishment. Okay, everybody, I will see you next Friday next week. Bye for now.